Hello and welcome to today, the 9th of October. Thank you to Tai, who changed the date on the slides at the very last minute. I was still in last week. And today we're going to be talking about a subject that it's been quite emotive for me to put these slides together and prepare for today's presentation. Some of the research that I've been doing and, referring back to my own journey, it's been quite confronting. So, yeah. Going to be an interesting one today, ladies and gentlemen. So it's all about faith. Faith, we'll explore what that means. We'll also explore what femininity and fierceness means, but also the women, the modesty, the empowerment, and all of the politics that go with it, because there are a lot of politics, even for the people who say they don't do politics. As you know, this series is based on my first book, Friday Bridge. And pretty much a lot of the books that I write and help other people to write, it's about owning your power, changing your story to change your life, but also getting present to who we are. It's about actually honoring ourselves. Whether you are male or female, you will take something away from today, whether it's for the men that will then start seeing women in a different light, or actually honoring the woman that, is their mother or their sister or their wife or their daughter, or whether it is you, the woman who listens to this and really takes stock of how you talk about yourself, and the things that you say about yourself, and how you shift the way in which you show up in life. Because we've been taught that being assertive or being focused or being someone who takes charge of things, that we're aggressive, that we're obnoxious, that we are bossy, and all of the other words that are negative about a woman taking charge of her own life. And remember, it wasn't that long ago that women could not buy a car without a husband's signature. It wasn't that long ago women were not allowed to have a mortgage by themselves, or they weren't allowed to vote. And in a lot of countries, it's not been that long that women have actually been in the workplace. We are still, in a lot of places, still conforming to a very Christian model of the world, where we're not allowed to work on a Sunday, or we're not allowed to do this, or we're not allowed. And religion is very different from faith. And I want to make that distinction very, very clear, because people think that if you've got religion, you've got faith, and if you've got faith, you've got religion. The two are not mutually exclusive. So we're going to go into that a little bit later. But how, when we, as women, when we lead, and yes, we may be assertive, we may be confident in what we say, we may be direct. That doesn't mean to say that we're not soft and that we don't have the emotions that, upset us. And yes, we've got hormones raging, and it's about really owning who we are and not making any apologies for it. How we can really embrace our femininity and our womanly curves, or our, some women don't have curves. I've got a friend from the north of England. She would love my curves. I'm like, you can have them, eat a bit more. But she doesn't. She goes to the gym and she's always working out, and it's like, I've got to get this fat off. It's like, yeah, you're not going to have curves if you've not got any fat on your body. You need some cake, love. But again, looking at what, why are we made to feel guilty when we eat, and why is it? I was sharing with a friend yesterday that I went out to a restaurant, and two men actually said, the barman and another guest, that it's so amazing to see a woman enjoy her food. I was there, I had got my book and my food that I'd ordered, and I'd ordered my drink, and I just sat there by myself enjoying it. And at the end, I've got two men commenting on how a woman enjoys food. And I was like, oh my God, I could be a bit very paranoid about this. Two men commenting on the way I'm eating. I eat with good manners, but why should a woman be sat there with a salad, pushing it around her plate, feeling, that she shouldn't eat it? Again, looking at how the cultures that we show up in, and how they, or the locations that we show in. Why do two men feel that they have the right or the need to come and comment on it, although it was done in a nice way and it was seen as complimentary and a refreshing, something very refreshing to see a woman enjoy her food. But really, you had to go and comment. Again, looking at why there's a need for that, and for us to actually reclaim our fire, our feminine fire, and really own every part of ourselves, included the wobbles and the C-section over the flap, and where we don't have to actually be when we're in our 50s looking like a 20-year-old girl, because there's Rihanna O'Connor. I think I pronounced her name correctly. She's this Irish comedian. She's bloody brilliant. If you haven't seen her on Instagram, go find her. She's there and she's talking about the feminine body and the shapes of it and just being with our bodies. So we're going to cover quite a bit today. I've probably just covered quite a bit already. But I want to really, as always, dive into the distinctions that we're going to be making, because faith, a lot of people, as I said, they refer to it as a religion, but it's actually having faith in the process, in yourself. And it's about having that unwavering trust and confidence in, I've got faith that the chair I'm sitting on is not going to break. I've got faith that the electricity is going to keep going. I have faith that my son is going to take our dog out for a walk in a few moments. I have faith. Yes, he's listening. I have faith that, I have the ability and the courage and the cheekiness to get my way in life. I understand that and I trust that and I'm confident in that. But sometimes faith can waver. Sometimes, as a woman, we have all these bloody raging hormones and we get emotional. And although we can see evidence for how great we are, we belittle ourselves. So it's about having faith in ourselves and the community that we're part of. And if we don't have faith in the people surrounding us, we need to get new people. Again, another distinction I found about the word faith is about having a strong belief in the doctrines of a religion. I mean, we're not going to go into the doctrines, but indoctrinated, that means something is forced upon you and you're made to believe it, and you will believe it, and it's done without choice. And it's also based on this spiritual conviction rather than proof. So you really have faith that there is air in this room that I'm breathing, because if there wasn't air, then I wouldn't be breathing. I have faith that my body, I can't see the water in my body, but I know that my body is made up of lots of water and carbon. I can't see it because it's dressed differently. So again, let's look at how things present themselves. As I said, the faith, belief, and the religion, they're not mutually exclusive, and one does not equal the other. I have a very deep faith. I have belief in the elements of the earth. I have a belief that there is this higher entity, this energy force. I don't have religion. I walked away from religion a number of years ago. Just didn't feel right for me, and how arrogant of me to think that my religion is the right one, and everybody else is wrong. I mean, come on, how arrogant do we need to be, really? Especially when religion is something that came about to control us and to make sure that we did as we were told. If we were good, we were not going to go to the hellfire, and if we were good, and we went to church and absolved all our sins, then we'd be a nicer person, when in fact, actually, we're seeing a lot of religious leaders around the world, they're not stepping up, they're not protecting people. And, who was it? Why have someone between us and this higher entity? Why do we need a rabbi or an imam or a vicar to be in between us and this God that we believe in, or this energy, or this source? I call it God's universe source, Gus. I borrowed that from a friend of mine called Jenna. Brilliant idea. And so again, looking at what that actually means for us individually and owning it. I own who I am and my faith and my belief. And, if I'm going to have any religion, it's the religion of dawn. And I want to look at this femininity, because I did look at this and I was like, femininity as a woman. And I was like, well, women are feminine. Oh, okay. And then I'm remembering all of these latest ideologies and the way that things are changing, and how, information is being manipulated. And, it's about womanliness. And I love that word, womanliness. Whoa, it sounds juicy. It's like, voluptuous. And, when you've got your womanly charms, that is your curve, that's your backside, your hips, your belly and your boobs, and these curves that soften you, and it just, yes, wow. But it's also how we are. And this is not to say that men cannot be nurturing, then that men can't be emotional or they can't be sensitive. We're talking about and people have been going on about these gender roles, and how there's a socially constructed, but when we look at kinship systems and cultural influences around the world, and we look at the way in which hormones manifest differently, and the men and the male body, and how stronger it is and how much bigger it is, and the levels of the layers of skin and the cellular makeup of a man versus a woman, you can't really argue that men and women are built differently, and that there are certain things that men do better than women, and vice versa. No man can ever give birth naturally to a child or grow that child within them. And, it's about making sure that we understand that, yes, there are roles associated with women and girls, and there are roles associated with men and boys. And that is nothing that we should be ashamed of. That is nothing that we should hide. But we're also going to be looking at how we harness that divine feminine within us, the gift of intuition, the gift of receiving, and the just really diving into all of that. So I'm going down a bit of a rabbit hole, and I want to get this out of the way, because I know that there are some people that will be very triggered by it. And if you want, I've got a mug that actually says I come with a trigger warning, and prepared to be offended. Because when we're looking at femininity, and we're looking at feminine, and we're looking at female, that there seems to be a bit of a blur about what that actually is. And Matt Walsh, he did a documentary back in 2022. I'm not saying I agree with everything that Matt Walsh stands for, but it was all about this gender critical trans ideology, men becoming women, women becoming men. I don't subscribe to that. If you get dug up in a year, you're still going to be identified as the sex that you were born with. And a woman, it's an adult female, with a womb, with a different size pelvis, with a different shaped pelvis, with different density of bone, different jaw lines and skull shapes. And, there is very physical differences of what a woman is. And feminine, we've all got, everybody has feminine and masculine energies, and the masculine ones are very logical, they're very driven, they're very powerful, in the sense that it's the hunter. There's an element of strength, physical strength, and whereas women, it's not as they're not physically as strong. Our bodies are built differently, which is why a lot of women tend to have a lot more serious injuries within cars, because cars are still pretty much predominantly designed for the male physique. It's when you look at keyboards, the men's hands are much bigger, and so so again, the spacing of the buttons on the keyboard, the size of our phones, and just things like that. And then you've got the way in which towns and cities and communities are built and designed, and how things are put together, and how they're so again, looking at the different ways in which the feminine shows up in our communities, in our lifestyle. Femininity, yeah, Femininity, it's juicy. It's about receiving. It's about, being open. And like I said, it's about owning that the curves and the sway of the hips and the wiggle, and not the force. It's just natural because of the way in which our bodies are. And like the size of our pelvis, and then which the fat forms around our body and around our skeleton. These are different. They are very different. And anyone that wants to argue about this, there's lots of scientific evidence. And yes, there are people trying to change that and distort that so that we all become a little bit confused about the world. And, so we can placate different mental illnesses. And it is a mental illness. You cannot change your sex. You cannot physically change your bone structure and your cellular makeup. It doesn't matter what you cut off, what you inject into yourself, and that's just how it is. And we've got to look at what all of the being a woman actually means, because it's not just a feeling, it's not just a slap of lipstick or wearing a dress. It's everything that a woman is. It's that ability to receive the seed of life into our bodies and grow it and actually produce breast milk for the right time of a child baby's life. When we look at that, where it's when we give birth to a baby and it's done naturally, and the vacuum within our body floods when we push that baby out naturally, and our body fills with the serotonin and all of those juicy, great, happy chemicals. Whereas once the baby is taken from our bodies through a C-section, we're seeing an increase in mental health issues and depression, postpartum depression or postnatal depression, depending on which phrase you want to use, because our bodies have been designed to push the baby out. Having had a natural birth and having had to have a C-section, I've experienced both, and I can tell you very, very different experiences. And when we say that men can become women or women can become men, we're actually dishonoring this beautiful piece of engineering that is our body, and everything that goes with that. And when we have all these self-ID laws where men go, oh, actually, no, I am a woman, we're actually losing the safety of everybody. Because if you cannot speak to about a man before he believed he became a woman, what about all of the crimes that were committed? So whether it's fraudulent crimes, financial crimes, or whether it's sexual crimes, that person no longer exists. This is a new identity. And if we're putting those people into schools, if we're putting those people into a place where they have sensitive data, okay, you might think you are, but we've got to actually own the fact that this is a delusion that a lot of people are facing. And we have to look at it on an individual basis. What did that person go through? How did their mother treat them? Were they in if it's a man thinking he's a woman, was it that they were baby? Was it the fact that they grew up with sisters and no male role model? What are we looking at on an individual basis, and how has this person got to this idea that a man is a woman? And I know that today is not about this, but we have to identify the fact that this is not a possible thing, that we cannot change the sex that we are. And it is something that I'm very, very confident about. It's why women cannot be used in a lot of these medical trials. And I know I touched on that a couple of weeks ago. And there's a lot of information out there. So I wanted to really put the stance on that today. I'm talking about women, true women. None of these people that have a prefix or a suffix before or after the word woman. I'm talking about women with the adult females, and the ones that are born with a uterus, the ones that there is only women and men. And that's where I stand on it, and that's my fierceness, and that's my faith, and I own that. And this is the thing, we're seeing a lot of women fall away from that, and we're seeing a lot of women deny the existence of women and what it actually means to be a woman. And it's another form of oppression. It's another way of women giving away their power and allowing men to define who we are, and they were allowing society to define who we are and actually strip us of our power. And that's why it was so important to cover all of that, because when we show up as women and we show up in our confidence and in our courage to speak against things that we could be shot down for, we could have, we could lose our jobs, or we could lose our children, or we could lose friends. Are they all worth losing ourselves over? Is losing a job really worth losing our own sense of self? Is losing friends just because we disagree on this issue, are they worth losing our sense of divinity, our sense of womanliness? Are they worth it? Because to me, no one is worth me losing who I am. Nothing is worth me losing who I am. And we have to stand firm in that. And this is where this fierceness comes from. When I was growing up, and you'll read about this in Friday Bridge, I was a tomboy. I had short hair, I was climbing trees, I was wearing trainers, and when I used to go out raving, it was trainers and combats, and I was there and I was dressed to sweat, and I was proper having it. And I am very alpha in the sense that I run my own businesses. I've always been a very fierce, very driven woman, but I'm still very feminine. And I still know that, that men are very visual. And I was just talking about the femininity and, the womanly charms. We all know that if a woman sways her hips, or, shows a little bit of breast, a little bit of the waistline and the hips, that we can manipulate men. We can actually get them to weaken in our presence. I'm trying to think of weaken in the presence of Alison Moyet, brilliant artist. And it shows that we can, if we behave in a way that, we want men to do something for us, we might act a bit vulnerable. It might be manipulation. If it's, when you manipulate something, you are changing something. Let's get the word as it is. But when we're looking at, if I might want a gentleman to open the door for me, you smile and you go, "Excuse me, sir," and you really honor the man inside of him, and you call him forward. And we're not seeing a lot of that. And we're seeing women having to, once again, redefine why and apologize for who we are. I was sharing with Ty at the beginning of this that recently I was at a meeting, and we were asked to share something interesting about ourselves. Not one man in the room dismissed himself before he shared something interesting, but every single one of the women in the room dismissed themselves. They didn't think there was anything interesting about them, and they struggled to share, and they struggled to say with confidence who they were and what they stood for. And I was just like, how sad is that? Men are not made to feel that they're not, well, men on the whole, some men are made to feel that they're less than. And some would argue that I've made men who believe that they're a woman feel less than, and they're doing it themselves in a lot of ways, because they're stripping themselves of their masculinity and not allowing it to show up in a way that honors them. But when we see women belittle themselves, or we see women not believe that they're interesting, or that they don't have the courage to speak their truth, we're teaching all the future generations this. Now, in Friday Bridge, I talk about my relationship with my mother. We are very similar. We do clash. And I remember that there were certain things in there that were in jokes with me and my mum. My mum had she was pregnant with me when she was 22, and I made a joke with my mum in the book about her being a bit young. You know, she was getting on it. Well, no, I made the joke that she was getting on a bit because compared to all of my other friends at school, my mum was quite a bit younger. And but when we look at the female body, we are designed to have children in a or conceive a lot more naturally without the aid of IVF, etc., and without challenges and disabilities. The optimum time for a woman to become pregnant is in her 20s. Now, I always knew that I wanted to be a mum. I always knew that I wanted to have my own business. And I also knew that nobody was going to tell me when I was going to have time off work or how much money I was going to make. And they weren't going to tell me that I could not be there for my children if they were sick or they were appearing in a school play or they were competing in a school team, sports team. And so my first act of feminism was to actually have my own business so that I could be a full-time mum on my terms. Now, this was me defining my power of actually honoring what I wanted, not what society told me. I had no female entrepreneurial role models. I had my mum she'd been a single mum. She was strong in her own way, quite ruthless. And I remember when I did child, because I was like, well, if I'm going to be a mum, I need to do child development. I need to understand how a child develops within the womb, their brain develops, and like their social and their physical, emotional, mental development. And understanding all of this, to give you a bit of backstory, I think I included it in Friday Bridge. I actually shared that my mum worked in what we call in Britain a geriatric home. She worked in an old people's home. When I was studying child development, it said that if you have children past the age of 30, you're a geriatric mum. My mind then connected the geriatric old people in the home my mum worked with me being pregnant at 30. And I was like, oh my God, don't want to be a geriatric mum. And the older I got, I'm so glad I had that piece of information because I'm seeing so many women putting their role as a mother on hold. Now, this is going to piss off a lot of women. But when we look at our body and we look at what we go through and we look at the power of a woman and what we are capable of, I had my children planned out. I knew I wanted to have 2 boys 4 years apart before the age of 30, because I knew that if that happened, by the time my youngest went to school, I'd be 35 and I could really focus on lots of other things. But it also meant that my body got to heal. And it also meant that by the time menopause came around, I wasn't dealing with temper tantrums, teething, trying to get pregnant and all of that. And I can really take some time for myself. But women have bought into this, that they are going to live forever, that they can have children forever, and that I'm not saying that, you know, we shouldn't have children in our 40s and 50s, but let's have a look at what's going on within our body. We're not designed that way. So many women are struggling to get pregnant or resenting the fact that they have not had children, and they're wanting children in their 60s. And let's just look at that. You know, by the time your child is 10, you're going to be in your 70s. By the time your child is 20, you're going to be in your 80s. Where is the grandparent in all of that? Where is the family lineage? Where is it we're learning from the older women in our families? Where is that family structure? It's been ripped from us in many ways because we've got to have it all. And there's not saying we shouldn't, but again, we've got to look at the power of the feminine body. We've got to look at, the female body. We've got to look at where our strengths are and actually act accordingly. And tap into that divine feminine within us. Because when we put things off and we take drugs to stop ourselves from getting pregnant, or we take and we're messing with our monthly cycles. And I mean, I took contraceptive pills. So, you know, again, I messed up my female flow. I messed it up. And that is one of the things that we are messing with our bodies for the sake of science. And then we're wondering why certain things in society are happening. And we're wondering why we're so easily manipulated when it comes to, you know, because we've been programmed from such a young age to take a contraceptive tablet. Every day we're putting a drug inside our body to change who we are, to manipulate what we're doing and change our chemistry and our biology in quite a few ways. And so it makes it easier for us to take drugs prescribed by big pharma later in life. Okay, so you've taken your contraceptive pill every single day, and now we're going to give you other pills to take because you as a woman, you are broken. You are not meant to bleed. You are not meant to bleed for this long. Because it makes men uncomfortable, and because we need you in the workforce. We don't want you in the workforce because we, you know, but we do want you in the workforce, and you know, all of these things. And we lose who we are. We mess with our intuition. We start to feel that without these drugs, we don't have power. Without this validation from society, we don't have power. And if people like myself speak out on this, then we're going to lose something instead of gaining. You know, we lose our voice, we lose our opinions, we lose our minds in so many different ways. And we lose our ability to choose how we want to navigate life. Now, and it also makes it very easy for us to be manipulated into taking things like the COVID vaccine, which was not tested. And lots of people who took it are still getting COVID. So it didn't really work, did it? And again, it's like we've been so manipulated from such a young age to take something external rather than listen to our body. We have to numb our body with processed food. We take these deodorants and we spray it on our body to mask the smell of what the processed foods are doing to us. We're not sweating, so we're keeping all these toxins within our bodies, and then that's messing with them. We get ill, and it's all connected. And this is the power that others have over us. And it might not seem like it's connected, but it absolutely is. And our bodies are being abused because a lot of these drugs that are given to us, they're not even tested on women. They're tested on either men or rats. And I don't know about you ladies, but I don't like being equated to being a rat. And their bodies are not the same as ours. Otherwise, we would be rats. It's, you know, and I also am not up for testing on animals. And if we speak out this, then our modesty and our it's questioned. And it's like, no, I'm honoring myself. I'm honoring the sovereignty of my body. I am honoring the mind that I've been given, the journey that I've been blessed to take, the lessons I've learned in life through the abuses that I've had from whether it's been my father, or whether it be my ex-husband, or whether it be from society, or the strange men out there, you know, or like other women, because other women can be very toxic. They can, you know, if we choose to be strong and speak out, or we become very successful, then other women want to pull us down, or they revere us and they're really what. But then there's that jealousy. I said to my friend yesterday that I cannot be, if I am friends with a male and I know that he's in a relationship, I back away from that male friendship, because that the relationship between a man and a woman is sacred. A relationship is sacred, and nobody should interfere with that. And that's a way of me being modest, you know, like I'm prepared to step away because I don't want another woman to feel insecure in her relationship and with the person that she's chosen. And this is when we start to show our different sides of leadership. How are we acknowledging other women? How are we acknowledging the sovereignty and the power within us? You know, our pheromones, and when we're honoring our body and we're not putting all of these toxic chemicals on our body or spraying it on our body, and, you know, changing the way our body works, to not have a period for God knows how many weeks or months, to then wanting to get pregnant and finding it difficult. And I know that I'm going off, but I've been really challenged by this subject because there's so much to say in such a short space of time. And when we're not honoring ourselves and tapping into having children, or building families at certain decades in our life, like I said, we lose that family, we lose the ancient wisdom, we lose that wisdom from our grandmothers and our great grandmothers, and we've already lost it in a lot of ways. And then we can look towards, you know, well, where did that knowledge go? Why are our young girls struggling? Why are families so broken? Why are we struggling within society to have respect for our elders? Because the elders in our family we're losing them, because we're building families later in life, and the trauma that's been passed down. Now, if we look towards the divine feminine, as I was saying, we can learn a lot from, I've written here, the Greek, Norse, Hawaiian goddesses. You know, there is also the Indian goddesses, and we look at the archetypes of women and the divine goddesses and the power. You've got the hunters, you know, you've got the seducers, women are very essential. And we look at women in artwork from years ago, from centuries ago, and you see the curves of a woman. You know, women led armies on her power as a woman, and we're losing that in so many ways. And you look at how many women are running businesses, and women that have become single mums later in life, and they're on their own, and it's challenging enough to have children and raise them by yourself in your 20s, yet in your 30s and 40s and 50s it gets even harder, because there's so much going on inside our bodies, and it takes our bodies longer to heal, takes our bodies, you know, we're the coping mechanisms that we've got, we haven't got the strength in a lot of time, or the energy, because our bodies are then going through menopause. And when we look at these Greek goddesses and the divine wisdom, and, you know, if we're running around after children in our 40s and 50s, rather than having them, the children raised and, you know, standing on their own 2 feet, like the amount of mummy martyrdom that we see, where women are giving up their dreams, they're giving up their aspirations, they're doing everything for their children, instead of saying to the children, I am the parent, I am your guide, I'm here, my role is to raise you as competent, confident, and happy individuals. And yet the women do everything for their children, and then the children grow up to be quite brattish. And this is a big subject. And I saw a couple the other day bribing their 5-year-old daughter to walk to school, and they were both begging this 5-year-old, and I'm just like, oh my God, where the fuck is your fire? Where is your parenting? You do not beg a 5-year-old to get to school on time. Like, you're the parent. And again, we've given away all of our power to our children in so many ways, because we're so grateful we got pregnant in the end. We're so grateful that we've got children. And yes, we should be grateful we've got children, but we should not lose our power. You know, we have so much to learn from how things were done in the past. And yes, there are certain things that need changing from what's been done in the past, but when I see parents begging their children to do what they need to do for the whole family to work more cohesively and effectively, I'm just like, what? How the hell did we get here? Like, really? I mean, I've got a book coming out in November called Own Your Ovaries. And seriously, ladies, a lot of us need to own our ovaries. We need to own the power, because if we have got the capacity to receive life into our body through a seed, grow that that human being. We can grow a brain inside of us. We grow a human being inside of us. And then we have this incredible body that produces just everything in equal measure, provided we're not abusing our body and, doing things that we shouldn't be doing. But again, when we give birth and we push it out and our bodies flood with all these happy chemicals, and then we produce breast milk to feed the child, and our bodies create the right amount of nutrients at each stage of a baby's development. Like, the milk changes for our baby at the age, and you're not telling me that doesn't tell us our power. And it's, I know that there are some people go, oh yeah, but I didn't meet the right person. Well, were you looking? Were you looking for the right person? Were you open to receiving that person? Or were you out partying? Or were you focusing on your work? What was it? I mean, I know that we've all got different life journeys. Some people were taking care of elderly parents. Some people were taking care of siblings because they lost their parents. I know not every situation, but again, I keep bringing it back to the birthing, because the female body is so incredible, and the power that we have, and we give it away. And this is one of the reasons, like, this power that women have, it frightens men, especially when we own our fierceness and we own the faith that we could have in ourselves, and we own our intellect and our ability to learn, and we have the ability to speak out and say, actually, I'm going to set a boundary here. I don't want you crossing that boundary. That is in place for a reason. It might be that you don't like a certain subject, that you don't like people discussing, or you don't like a certain level of closeness or people touching you, or you don't like a certain level of intellect, or lack of, in your space. Again, it's knowing when we know ourselves, when we honor ourselves, and we put those boundaries in place, or those standards in place, then we are encouraging other people to respond accordingly. So if you don't meet this standard, I don't want you in my life. If you believe these things, you're not welcome to have that conversation with me. Because you're not ready to have that level of conversation. When we're looking at some of the things that we get to learn. Now, I know that I'm a very privileged person in the sense that I have traveled the world to many places, into places I didn't even know existed. And I've seen things a lot of people haven't. And that's what makes up my view of the world. And I know that there are some people that are stuck in their own monocultural, homogenized view of the world. And that's not to say that that is right or wrong. That just is what it is. When I'm having a conversation with somebody about a certain subject, they have to meet me at a certain level. And I say that because there's no point me having a political debate with somebody who is 5 years old, because that person does not know enough about the political systems and the way in which the world works. Whereas, and again, we've got to meet people where they're at. My level of understanding about certain things is really high. My understanding of chemistry, really don't want to be having a conversation with somebody who knows about chemistry. That's not my book. That's not my ball. That's not my wheelhouse. I'm not very good at science in a lot of ways. I can read, I can understand, and I get to where I get to. And a lot of what I've shared here today, there are going to be people who know a lot more than me, and please do feed me some information. But again, it's about understanding what being a woman, this woman that exudes from within us, and knowing her and nurturing her, and refusing to be silent, refusing to play small just because we are a woman, and identifying, I actually like this, and I like the fact that so to use an example, when I was training for MMA, for mixed martial arts, several years ago, I was training so hard. I lost my boobs, I lost my hips, I lost my butt, and I had an 8-pack. I didn't just have a 6-pack. I had an 8-pack. I had zero fat on my body, and I look at pictures of myself now and go, oh my God, I did not look like a woman. I was ripped. There was no boobs, and I like my boobs. And again, it's like knowing these bad boys, people pay thousands to get boobs like mine. Lots of people insert silicone into their bodies to get boobs like mine. And again, it's like knowing what you love about yourself and being in love with yourself, hugging yourself, stroking yourself, caressing yourself, knowing what pleasures you. We have to do this as women because there's so many women so detached from their bodies. We're so in here. And I've been fallen foul to it. The woman I was 10 years ago, the woman I was 5 years ago, is not the woman I am now because I'm on this deeper journey of, and I do thank this whole trans ideology and Matt Walsh saying, you know, what is a woman? Because it's like, well, it's fucking obvious what a woman is. But to some people it isn't for some reason. But why is that? And because women don't know who they are. And if we're not going to know who we are, and we're not going to know what we like, we're not going to know what makes us belly laugh without wine, we need to be able to know what makes us laugh and what we are comfortable with and how confident we are in different areas with and without alcohol, with and without drugs. If we cannot show up fully as ourselves, happy, joyful, daft, and intelligent and powerful and brave and courageous without the supplementation of substances, then we don't know ourselves. We are hiding behind this facade of alcohol or drugs. We don't need them to be happy. We don't need them to be confident and courageous. And we don't need them to know our own bodies. We get to do that naturally. And yeah, went off on one there, didn't I? And again, it's like when we have faith in ourselves, we get to have faith in so much more. We achieve so much more. We produce a lot more. We're a lot more effective. We're a lot, you know, and our energy levels go up and we become more empowered by who we are. So in turn, we empower others. And that level of leadership is, women need that. We have lost, putting together my Owning Our Ovaries book. One of the things I said to my co-authors, to the ladies that took part, I really want you to come up with two people, two women that you really, really admire. Now, I was very blessed. Several of them said they wanted to include me in that. I'm like, yeah, we can't put that in the book. And it's not because I don't want to own that fact, but it's like I can't have all the people in the book saying how much they admire and love me, because, you know, I know they love me. I know they admire me. But again, it's about celebrating other women, bringing other women's stories to the light. And I remember on LinkedIn at the beginning of the very beginning of this year, I celebrated a woman every single week from across the world, from throughout the ages, in science, in politics, in medicine, in religion, and in business, and you know, and I invited people, other women, to celebrate and honor and nominate another woman. We had two women nominated. Women find it difficult to find and to celebrate other women and to nominate other women who inspire them. You go and ask a guy, give me the name of two guys that inspire you. Bang, bang, done. You ask a woman to name two people that inspires us, guarantee she'll come back with two men's names. Like, what are we doing? If we're not empowering ourselves, we're not going to be empowered by other women. There's going to be that layer of jealousy or resentment or nervousness or a lack of confidence. And that only comes when we own who we are and we have faith in ourselves and we embrace everything about ourselves as women. We can rise up and we can get to support and celebrate other women unapologetically. And this actually builds bridges across communities, and it builds bridges across families. And it's only when there's that jealousy and that spitefulness and that insecurity that breaks down communities. This is why women and men are different when it comes to leadership, you know. And when we do this and we honor who we are, and we honor what we want and our purpose, and we stay true to it, and we get connected with our body, and we feel those emotions, and we allow those emotions to flow through us, then magic happens. Like our finances transform, we the people around us transform, and we live these lives that are so much more abundant and joyful. And when injustices are done against us, or we, like, for example, those of you who know and you've been following, you'll know that I was raped back in 2017. I could have allowed that to go, but no, it's not about me. If I don't fight back, I'm allowing this person and the police and the doctors to fail other women. Me raising intelligent, competent, and confident young boys into men. I didn't need to raise children. They were already children. As a woman, I needed to raise two sons who were going to be great husbands, because there are enough women out there with shitty husbands, and I'm not going to add to that. I'm not going to raise two young men so that without the skills they need to be great husbands and great men. We don't need any more men that are incompetent. We don't need more little boys running around in adult bodies. What the world needs is great men, and they can only be great men if they are raised by great women and great men. But there are far too many women who are not honoring their own greatness. And if we're not honoring our own greatness, how can our boys, our young men, our sons, and our husbands and our colleagues respect us as great women? It's not possible. I'm really on it today. I'm telling you, like, I've been diving deep into so much, and I'm just like, I've got so much in my head that I need to get out. And I just have been paying so much attention to the women, in the street, and people not taking care of the way that they look. And, it's like, when was the last time you put a brush through your hair? And when was the last time you actually wore a dress that actually honored your figure? I mean, honestly, I went out in Cardiff not a few months ago. I needed bleach for my eyes, and it was like, oh my gosh, people don't want birthday presents if they've already been unwrapped. People, if I gave you your present and it was already unwrapped and used, would you want me to give it to you? Probably not. Let's just have that as an idea out there and apply that to different areas of your life. It was shocking. It was really shocking. There were things I really wish I could unsee, but that's not a problem. That's not a thing. And, choice, yes, they have a choice on how they show up for themselves, but they're not choosing. They are not consciously choosing. And you can tell in the way in which they hold themselves, and you could tell in the way in which they behaved. They were not choosing, they were reacting. They were just drifting. They were like a leaf lost. And it's so sad. And that's the thing, when you tap into your own feminine, your own divine feminine, you can see things about others that was present within yourself, or that yeah, it's just yeah, I really am on it today. I'm loving it. I'm just a bit but again, like I said, when we honor who we are, and we have faith in ourselves, and we own this power that we have, whether it's our sexual power, whether it's our feminine fire and our power to think and birth something incredible. If we can birth a human being, we can birth anything. If we can create human life within us, we can create anything. We can create financial abundance. We can create happy communities. We can create brilliant companies. We can create a brilliant career for ourselves. And, and it it just really starts with us remembering who we are at our core, what makes us happy, what brings us joy, rather than us going through the motions and getting swept up with everybody else. Take time to come back to self. Go and study the female archetypes. Go and study, your body, and go and love your body, because our bodies are amazing. And we're all goddesses. We don't need to be Artemis. We don't have to be, all of these. I mean, I love Artemis. I was actually doing a podcast for USA TV, Global TV and Radio, and I was asked to choose the goddess I resonated with most, and it's Artemis. Go and find out. Like, honestly, she's amazing. And one of the things I really, really request and invite you to take a look at is, what are you resisting by owning your power? What are you resisting by dismissing yourself? Someone says to you, tell me about yourself. Tell me an interesting thing about yourself. And you can't think of one interesting thing about yourself, or you're not confident sharing that. You've got work to do, lady. Ah, you really have. And I'm going to encourage you to just relax a bit. Just switch off. Go and take yourself away by yourself for a week, a month. The house is not going to burn down. If you've taught your children how to not burn down the house, to make an omelette for themselves, or if you've got a husband or a partner, or even like a co-parent, you hopefully chose him for a reason. You chose him because you thought he'd be a great dad. Let him be a great dad, and go and take yourself off and get some time by yourself so you can find out who you are. Because unless you know who you are and what you stand for and what you truly believe, you don't know yourself. You don't know how amazing you are. And even those of us who have done a lot of work, and even those of us who know about the 5D realm and ascension and the goddesses and divine feminine and all of that, not even we know fully who we are yet. It's a beautiful journey, and it unfolds. And those of you who have not seen, like my book, oh, you can't see it because I've got this blurry thing on because of all the boxes in the background. The Potent Power of Menopause. When you get to menopause, as Fiona says, fuck it in your 50s. I'm not quite 50, but still. And if you haven't read that book, or if you have read that book, go and read Crossing the Line. Oh, this is where I took on Police Scotland and I beat them. I've taken on the government and I've beaten them because I believed in myself and I knew what I was fighting for. And you have got the capacity to do the same. So I'm going to shut up now, because I am on a bit of a rant today. And good luck finding a snapshot of what we're going to share today, Tai. But remember, your soul always knows what you need. And if you're numbing it with alcohol, with drugs, or with crappy processed food, and you don't think you've got time to make a decent meal, you're telling yourself you're not worth it. And if you're telling yourself you're not worthy in any area of your life, that's really sad. And I encourage you to do the work. I encourage you to ask yourself why you're not worth making a meeting with yourself, why you're not worth the fortunes that you want, why you're not worthy of the lifestyle that you secretly desire but are too afraid to admit. I invite you to do that. And if you have not yet booked a session with me, then please go and book a narrative coaching inquiry session with me. Again, it says that today it's at 3:30, but there's one at 4 o'clock. Really have got to block out Thursday afternoons, Tai, if you can arrange that for me, please, darling. But again, go and have a look at those dates. This what do you call it? Link will be in the comments, and you are welcome to book a call with me. If you want to book a call with me to have a go at me for my views on being gender critical, forget it. Not interested in having a disrespectful debate. I believe what I believe. I really encourage you to understand why you have been swallowed up in a narrative that's not helpful to anybody. But again, if you really truly want to embrace who you truly are, and you want to, and I'm realizing that I'm saying that, and the people go, oh, but I'm a man, but I'm truly a woman. No, you're not. And for the women out there that really want to honor themselves, and gain courage and the confidence to speak their truth, then please do feel free to book a call with me. If you want to have a look at some of my books, Friday Bridge, this one here, this is the one that inspired this story, this series. Wallahi is my story about living out in Egypt and getting followed by the secret police. Those two books go together. Yeah, so there are two of my books. We've got the Scotland saga is being the one I held up earlier. The reason it's here is because we're in the process of splitting this book into two books, because my readers, although they voted it in the top 3 books of women, ambitious women, and in the top 3 of parenting books, there was lots of questions. So I am going back into it, and I'm going to be answering the questions, and we're splitting it into the book Crossing the Line and Mothers Like You. And we've got the cover that will soon be revealed, because I am now working on this book, which is really quite exciting. It should be out early next year. So if you've got a book where you've taken something on, or you've been through something and you would really love to write a book about it, then do let me know. I'm going to ask Ty. I don't know how to stop sharing my screen. Bear me a second. I think if I do that, that's it. Still recording. If you really want to write a book, and you want to run the idea by me, please do so. Book one of those calls and let's look at what your story is and how we can actually make that into a book for you, if you're willing to show up every day for the rest of your life on that book. Because if all you're wanting to do is just write for the sake of being an author, I'm not the person to work with. I'm the person to work with if you want to share your story and make a real big difference in the world. If you're not going to show up for your book and you're not going to show up for yourself and what you believe in, then we're probably not going to be a fit. So I'm going to leave it there. Thank you very much for staying with me today. I know I went off on one. I got very passionate and like, words were wanting to come out of my mouth a little bit quicker than I had capacity for. And to all of you who do listen, I am really grateful that you show up and you comment and that you share. If you are wanting to me to slow down a little bit, because I know that some of you are listening to this as English as a second language or a third language, and I do speak really quite quickly. Pardonami, lo silencio, and Asfa. I can't remember what it is in Italian. My Italian's getting really bad. I need to watch more Italian TV and go back to Italy and visit there. But it's been a pleasure serving you through these videos, and I do appreciate everybody who watches them on catch up. And this is what you can do. If you've written a book, you can create a series of seminars and videos for people on your. People don't actually have to show up live. Sometimes I have people showing up live and we have great conversations afterwards. Sometimes I have nobody show up, but I have people watching. And we are going to be adapting the time so that more people can join us. But remember, if you're not honoring yourself and you're not willing to show up for yourself every day, then you've got work to do. You've got to ask yourself why you're not worth showing up for. Why are you not worth it? Because I know I'm worth it. I get up every day, and some days it's easier than others. But I still get up every day. I'm still committed to my vision, still committed to my purpose, and I'm still committed to my own happiness and financial success. So I will leave you with that, and hopefully I'll see you soon.